MetaGami is a very unique product. Unique because it offers advantages over existing products of a variety of different types. This particular discussion describes how MetaGami, compared to Excel, takes data that would be relatively static or less useful in Excel and converts it into actionable intelligence that you can actually use for decisions. Our grandson turned 16 a few months ago and bought himself a nice 2004 Toyota Camry. It's very functional. It gets him to and from school, to and from basketball practice, gives him the freedom to move around the city easily, and of course relieves mom and dad of the need to do that. Someday, perhaps, our grandson may achieve something that would allow him to upgrade from a purely functional vehicle to one that is more responsive, more powerful, and even more flexible. The comparison of the 2004 Camry to the Porsche is, excuse me, as you might expect, analogous to the comparison between Excel and MetaGami, a product expressly designed for dynamic analytical purposes. This is an image of a spreadsheet. It's not a real spreadsheet. The data, anyway, is not real, but the columns are along the lines of those taken from an organization that had a spreadsheet similar to this. That organization in this spreadsheet is designed to deal with solicitation of donations from various different offices about various different campaigns. And the original spreadsheet that this is intended to mimic had 65 columns of data of the type that you see here, where each row was a particular solicitor's results for a particular day. Now, in this example, we've highlighted a few of the columns in green. Those columns are the ones that you might want to understand more deeply in a more detailed way. So, for example, you may want to know which solicitor is better than others, or which zip codes are more productive for solicitations. Can't do anything about that in Excel easily, although with a great deal of work and the repetition of that work for each new body of data, you could certainly achieve something better than mere columns of data. But in MetaGami, it's far easier to do that. We've read the data from this notional spreadsheet into MetaGami and created a comparable table that contains all of the same data imported electronically, including the data about the hourly rate of the various solicitors. We then use this data to create a table. In this particular case, all the columns are those that are in the original spreadsheet. And in addition, we've added columns like what is the percent of calls made where you've actually made contact? Of those contacts, which resulted in a positive result, a donation? How many total dollars were raised? How many total hours were required to accomplish it between the time the solicitor started and ended? What was the total compensation of the solicitor, and what was their return on investment? How many dollars in donations did they have compared to the dollars in total compensation? Now, certainly all of those things can be done in a spreadsheet, but here's what cannot. These various fields are called identifier fields, and they're used to filter the data. So the data in this table, which is not very useful but is designed to show you something, is about user ID 123 for the basic campaign in office number 1 on September 15th of 2018. Now, each of those drop-downs can be changed to get different campaigns, different office numbers, different dates, and different user IDs, and then the data that's in the table is specific to the names or the values that are in those identifier fields. But watch this. We can copy this page, same exact table as I showed you previously. In this particular case, though, we've eliminated a couple of the identifier fields, those for date and user ID or solicitor, and instead have created those as columns with simple drag and drop So now we look at all of the solicitors for all of the dates who were working on the basic campaign for office number 1. And here is all of the data for that basic campaign and that office number 1. In addition, we've added some metrics at the bottom to total the columns, to take the average of the column data and the median of the column data. We copy the page again. That's literally a 10-second process. And in this case, we've added an identifier field. We've added the user so that we can now look at the data by user. And you see here for user number 134, whose name is Ashlyn Tilley, all the calls that she's made on all of the dates where she's made those calls. Once again, we have metrics at the bottom that tell us the total, the average, the median, all of the meaningful data that can be produced. And this table, once again, would be replicated for each of the solicitors in each of the offices in each of the campaigns by simply selecting different values for user ID, office, and campaign. So you have all of the dates and the metrics associated with all of those calls made, in this case, by Ashlyn. Now, if we use the totals at the bottom, as you see in this oblong, copy the page again, once again, get rid of the individual identifier field for solicitor, and in this case, show each of the solicitors as a row in the table, where the values in the table come from the total column on the previous page. We now have the ability to compare the solicitors to one another. And we've added other information so we can see the total raised, the total hours, the dollars raised per hour, the total compensation for each, and the return on investment for each. Now, in this particular case, we've sorted the table by the percent of positive results achieved. How many of those that were spoken to actually made a decision to donate? And we can now compare, because of the sorting of this, compare each of the solicitors to the average of 14% at the bottom, or the median of 13%, and we can see those that are better and those that are worse. And as a result, we can decide that we may want to increase the hours of Caitlin and Donald and Malcolm and so on, or maybe give them a salary increase. We may want to look at Sandy Breeze, Bob Herrick, Georgia Fields, and get them more coaching, or ultimately maybe even ask them to leave the organization because they're not getting the kinds of positive results that others are. And we can do the same thing for the total dollars raised, the total raised per hour, the ROI, anything we want, we can sort on and quickly get the same kind of information comparing various solicitors to one another. But now watch this. We can copy the page again. In this particular case, we go through a similar process to what I've shown you for solicitors, and now we're looking at the data by zip code. If you look in the first column, you'll see the various zip codes. All of the data here is the aggregation, the total of the calls made, the contacts, the percent contacts for each of those particular zip codes. And we can once again determine which is the more productive zip codes so that we can focus more attention on those zip codes. We can also, and we could have done this for any of the tables before, but identify a particular time frame, as you see here. September 16th through September 17th, and the data is just particular to those particular days for the basic campaign for office number 1. The reason MetaGami accomplishes this is because it has 4 unique characteristics. It's simple to use, it's dynamic, it's customizable, meaning the page can look any way you want, not just like a spreadsheet, and it can integrate data of all types. Numeric data, tabular data, audio, video, image, all of those data types and other data types are all possible to integrate together within MetaGami. What makes this particular use, the actionable intelligence, so beneficial is the dynamic aspect of MetaGami. Its ability to respond moment by moment to those needs that exist. Analysis means you really don't know where you're going when you get started, but you need whatever you need at the time you need it. as you're going through the process. And the dynamic nature of MetaGami is the strongest of the four very important characteristics, but the strongest in this particular kind of analysis. So once again, if we think of Excel as a very functional, very useful product that has proven itself years and years and hundreds of millions of users, including me, but for circumstances where you really want to get data turned into meaningful, actionable information, it's very difficult to do, if possible, in Excel. But using MetaGami gives you the facility to accomplish that kind of analysis in a very short amount of time, with a very short amount of effort, small amount of effort, and have the process repeated over and over again, regardless of the body of data.